Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, May 31. We are joined by our boy band cast of all-star local journalist Josh Molina, a man of many moods, and mystery of Newshawk, Ryan P. Cruz from The Independent, and Nick Welsh, award-winning columnist and executive editor of the Santa Barbara newspaper.
There you
Santa Barbara
go.
Independent.
They tried. They could never get him.
And they didn't try very hard. All right. Thanks, fellas. We were all treated, we should say, in the interest of full disclosure, we were invited to a off the record pre city council meeting briefing about a proposed sales tax increase, which I guess they're going to be discussing on Tuesday. And all of us managed to attend except Josh, who sent his deputy. He was too busy with other things. I'm not sure what exactly, but
WrestleMania.
basically what it is the city administrator is on board, and she's on board also with this 1 cent sales tax increase proposal.
Half cent.
It's a half cent.
Oh, I'm sorry, half cent. Yeah, it was a 1 cent measure. She was a half cent. Half cent. Thank you for correcting me. Sales tax thing. So they went through it all. Nick, what do you think? Is it going to, first of all, A, will there be enough votes on the council to put it on the ballot? And then B, will there be enough votes to pass it?
I think there will most definitely be enough votes on the council to put it on the ballot. And I think they should be able to marshal a convincing campaign to get it through. It really kind of depends, I think, on the economy, the sense of lack of confidence or confidence in the city, and how people feel about that, whether they want to entrust a little bit more money to the government. But I think what struck me, two things in that room, I think will be very strong arguments in favor of it. Both have the first name Kelly. So you have Kelly Gordon, the police chief, and Kelly McAdoo, the new city administrator. Now, by law, they cannot campaign. They can answer questions and provide information, which is another word for saying campaign. And I think the two of them are very compelling and fresh voices, and they come across well. And the argument is that the sales tax is going to generate $15 million a year on a good day, and that without it, they're going to be throwing women and widows and orphans overboard. And by widows and orphans, we mean firefighters and police officers. And then they get down to libraries and other things. And I think that the people who vote in Santa Barbara most religiously, I think, are going to be open to that argument. But really, to me, what was striking is Kelly McAdoo, who is the new city administrator, has been on the job 2 weeks now. I don't think we would have seen that meeting necessarily with that many people in the room with that degree of sort of freewheeling openness. It's not to say they haven't happened in the past. Clearly, when the Paseo Nuevo housing proposal was proposed, we had a similar meeting like that. But
Yeah,
I think McAdoo is a little bit more comfortable in the open engagement.
yeah, good point. Ryan, I guess the immediate thing we're looking at is what, a $7 million shortfall for the fiscal
General fund, yeah.
in July 1, unless when you figure out all the monkey business with the parking fund, it could be as much as 11. This would bring in 15. What was your feeling about the arguments they were making on behalf of the sales tax?
I mean, I think they had a few strong arguments that this might be the best way to kind of meet our budget deficit. Now, the city is also exploring other revenue measures, and people have talked about them in the past, and that's raising TOTs, it's property transfers and vacancy taxes and things like that. But when it comes down to how much money those would bring in the long run and consistently, the city budget offices, they know that that's not going to bring in as much money as this could possibly bring in. Now they're estimating $15 million a year in this half-cent sales tax measure, and that could really help us meet this. Cost of doing business is growing each year, and our revenues are also growing, but not as fast. And to have this influx of this $15 million a year, I mean, this would be the time to do it right now when we're seeing this kind of budget deficit and when we can meet this and do something about it. Now, this is kind of the time to do it. We can raise it up to 9.25, and if we weren't to do it, the county could potentially do that, and the city wouldn't get the full portion of that. And that's another aspect of why they want to get this done. And so city council will get a look at it on June 4th. And then on June 11th, they'll take a vote. And if they approve 5-2, it can go on the ballot.
Yeah.
And just a little example of, I was talking to Eric Friedman, city council member, and he was saying that the insurance costs are going up so high. So right now, if there's an accident, insurance works, the deductible that the city would have to pay out of pocket is $350,000, and then the insurance would kick in. It's about to go up to $3 million. So when your deductibles go from $350,000 to $3 million, the cost
Just a few years, yeah,
doing business is a reality.
Yeah, I mean, another reason to do it now is there's this state ballot measure kicking around Sacramento, which may or may not get on the ballot. They're still negotiating with the Chamber of Commerce, which would raise the threshold for passing a tax such as this, a local general tax. They only need 50% plus one now, but if that got on the ballot, I think it's 55, it might be 60. I can't recall the exact number, but it would make it harder in any case. So this, could be their last chance. Josh, you've been around City Hall for a long time, long enough to remember Measure C, which was a 1 cent sales tax increase, passed 2017. Gosh, how time flies when you're having fun. What's your sense of the sort of political landscape in terms of how open people are going to be? I know cranky old people who vote like me, will remember Measure C. Didn't we just do this with the sales tax, as well as the ongoing problems on State Street and all of these other things? I wonder if it is such a good time to ask for money for city workers, which is basically what it is. 75-80% is going to go to employees. What's your take?
Well, I was struck that at the finance committee that I covered, that Councilwoman Megan Harmon opposed this sales tax, and she did it after Rob Frederick spoke, after Finance Director Keith DeMartini spoke, and made the case for why a half-cent sales tax would be needed. And what Councilwoman Harmon said, and she's widely regarded as the most progressive of the seven, she said that she would support it probably to put it on the ballot and let the voters decide, but that this kind of tax is regressive, and she felt as though she had a moral problem, an ethical problem with charging the sales tax to people who can least afford it, and then saying we're going to use it to build housing. And so she felt like that was a unfair thing to do, and that it would hurt the poorest people the most. And so that sentiment, of course, is always out there, but usually hear that sort of stuff from like a Lanny Ebenstein or like a conservative economist. So it's interesting that she is raising those concerns. I think that it's a half cent. So to most people, they think, what is a half cent when it's going to go to all of these wonderful programs? So I think that is on the city side when they're trying to approve this. There will be, I'm sure, some groups who come out against it, and will they be able to wage a campaign that is significant enough to convince voters that we just approved Measure C, the sales tax, and we're using it to build the police station. We're using it for things other than roads and infrastructure, which is how it was generally pitched. So there will be a percentage of people who will oppose it, but I don't know if it will be significant enough, because at the end of the day, a half cent doesn't feel like much when you do one expense. When you add it up over a year, it is significant. So
food and pharmaceuticals, and I can't remember the other,
There'll be exceptions
will
for
be exemptions.
for
A
some
couple of things
grocery
that came up that were
medications.
interesting, going to your point, Josh. The city claims that 50% of the sales generated in the city of Santa Barbara come from out-of-town people, not residents. So we'll be taking the money out of other people's pockets. Now, they didn't say if these people who commute here to work or whatever, but the other one was they did polling, and they found that support for the sales tax was higher amongst younger and lower income people. And so if you looked at where it was the highest, it was in that group, the ones who would be the most regressively impacted.
Yeah. And it was interesting the way that also, I assume that was the ballot measure language that they plan to use if it gets on. And so what they led with 911.
Yeah, public
police-
safety,
public
homelessness,
safety
and housing. Yeah, those are the three.
Right, they have like 400 words of all the good stuff you're gonna get, and then at the bottom, they go, "And we're gonna raise your tax," which is kind of an interesting sentence construction, I thought. But that I have to say though, when they did the chart, which sort of showed revenues versus costs, and the two lines crossing, and then they took it out to 2028. Those two lines are getting further and further apart, and even if this gets on the ballot, even if this gets passed, $15 million, I think, they're gonna be looking for money in a couple more years, because so much of this is fixed costs, these pension costs, for one thing, which the courts have found, you can't really do. They have a two-tier pension system. And as Kelly McAdoo pointed out, it'll take a couple years for that policy to catch up, so that people who have been hired more recently get less of a pension. But nonetheless, it's all going to employees, and it's going to be hard to stem those costs in the long run. So anyway, good news, something to talk about for the election.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only way to change it is something they'll never do, which is dramatically reduce the number of people who work for the city of Santa Barbara. And I'm not talking about the temporary part-time workers, but the highly paid middle management and administration. They're never going to do that, but that's the only long-term way. And then I just want to mention, with the governor's May revise, it's trickling down to local governments as well. And a lot of these transportation grants and planning grants that they had been hoping to write in order to get funding for programs, things that we've seen, from extra bike lanes, street narrowing, new sidewalks, those are not going to be as available as much with the current state of the Sacramento budget. So, I mean, there are a lot of issues, and the fact that they abandoned and scrapped that ridiculous pay-by-plate parking program could help the sales tax pass, because at least they took that off the table, and now it's just one thing for voters to think about.
Boy, if there's an outrage, it gets me. It's fewer bike lanes. Oh, I can't find it. Come on, how can we do this? All right, let's move on, Josh. To the surprise of no one, the Santa Barbara Teachers Union. Now, have they voted? Have they counted the ballots yet on the strike, or they're still voting? Yeah.
No, they're holding a pre-strike authorization vote. They started last Friday. It ends at 5 p.m. today, and they will then determine and count. But it's basically to say we're poised to call a strike and strike if no agreement is worked out. I believe it's June 12th. With the third party hearing that they're going to have. And so if it doesn't turn out in the way that they want, they're like, we're ready to strike. So that's what's happening now. It's a double envelope vote. It's anonymous, and it's a public, they've said this publicly, they've been all over social media, and it's a way to let Hilda Maldonado and the district and the board know we're ready to strike if we don't get our way. I will say, though, that the SBTA has seemingly, at least maybe my perception, been more open to settling in recent days. At least in my reporting, Hosby Galindo said, we're prepared to settle. We want to settle. We don't want to go to a strike. We're willing to work it out on June 12th. And so again, it's a leverage move to like pressure the district because the district's not saying anything. But I feel like the strike is the worst possible outcome. And, hopefully they're going to come to some kind of resolution.
Right. So the vote technically is to authorize the leaders of the union to call a strike if they think so. Right.
Yes.
And now where are they on the, what is it, 27%, 28%? What, they've split the difference or the district has in their offer, or where does that stand?
So they want 15% and then 8% over 2 years. And the school district, I think, is offering like 13 and 5 over the 2 years. And so it's significantly less than they want. And I just want to go to the whole point of these meetings, like they're incredible. The amount of people in this room, teachers who are showing up week after week, who are pouring their hearts out. And one other thing that has sort of come up with this was they're increasingly unhappy with board member Sunita Beal, the new one, because she's been on social media, on Facebook group SB Plan, like going back and forth with these teachers.
Really?
And they're very upset because they feel as though this is a Facebook group for parents, for teachers. It's not for the board. They already have a platform to exercise their power. And so there were comments at the board meeting about, you're going into these chat rooms or in these Facebook rooms and basically saying, we are the ones who are making it difficult by not coming to the table to want to settle. You're making us feel bad. You're shaming us in these groups. You're a board member. You should not be doing that. You're using your power. And so that came up during the meeting, and that's another sort of wrinkle and complication to this whole thing.
Wow. All right. All right. Hey, Ryan, you had this story about the rents and renoviction, latest in that. And the city has now charged the owner of the Bath Street thing
Yeah.
with
So
a
that
criminal offense. What is that?
that's a big shift in,
Yeah.
power dynamics and the city kind of taking a stance that I haven't seen before. And to say that these termination notices that were placed were not placed the right way. The city did just change the ordinance in January. So, the property owners are contending that it's really confusing. And not only that, it was written for, political reasons. But what we're seeing, and speaking with tenants on a day-to-day basis, it's not necessarily a win because it's not getting easier for people that are renting for, paying $1,500 to maybe $2,500. People in that range, they're still hurting to find places in Santa Barbara, and they're very rare to find a spot like that. But to see the city kind of press charges, criminal charges on the landlord, it represents a big shift in thinking, and it's going to ruffle a lot of feathers. And we've already seen people, come speak at city council. Landlords worried that this is going to change the whole dynamics. Now, I want to be clear that for landlords that are doing everything above board, there should be no change in the ordinance or anything at all. It's people that were doing these, what they do is send these notices, and a lot of it is people that, sometimes they don't speak English, and you get a permit number and you don't know where to look at on the city website for the permit number. You don't know what the scope of that work is. And the ordinance clearly states you have to have that information now. So now it's up to the property owner to prove that the work can't be done it needs to be 30 days at least, and they need the people to leave. Now, this is going to be going back and forth in court, where this is going to end up. Do I think that he's going to actually face a guilty verdict? I don't know. That's a stretch, but it's a big shift to see the charges pressed and city's attorney's office actually, go forward with this.
So
Hey,
Ryan,
Nick,
hold on one second.
who was that
Let's
guy?
say
Who was the guy that the city charged that you wrote so much
a
about?
guy named Knapp, Knapp. Now, what is it that was specifically alleged that they did that was improper in this? Because that part, I'm not entirely
So
sure.
what's improper is they sent notices. So originally, when they bought the property in September, they sent termination notices, letting people know that that work needed to be done. And they had and then January, they sent another round of notices. Now, this was after the city found the first notices to be insufficient. So they had another round of permits, but the permit numbers on these new termination notices were the same permits as they put previously. And as I understand it, that wasn't the proper information that they needed to give the tenants. And because they didn't give the proper information to the tenants, those termination notices would have been void. And so evicting those tenants with those notices was illegal.
Hey, Josh, it seems like a little bit of a overreach to me. I don't know. I mean, they just wrote this thing. They wrote it on the fly. There was all kinds of political controversy. Now all of a sudden they're going to charge somebody criminally. I mean, I don't know. What do you?
I think between Ryan and I, we're covering the story completely, because like we're talking, like both sides, right, are like feeling unheard. And so they're like coming to us. And so between both of our coverage, I think we're like telling the whole story is the tenants in this town are being screwed, okay, like by developers who are evicting them unfairly, and they're intimidating them, right? There's the thing. You throw a bunch of paperwork in their face, say you need to move out. People are scared, right? It's intimidating. And then if they throw some tenant relocation money, they're going to move, okay? But what the tenants association is saying is like, you've got to follow the process because you're scaring people into leaving when they don't have to leave yet, okay? What the landlords are saying, some of them, specifically in 215 Bath Street, they're saying is, we need to fix up this stuff. You're living in unsafe conditions. The electrical, the plumbing, we just bought this. Don't blame us for all the background and the history. And so they're saying, we need to evict you. And the question is, do you really need to evict us? Is it really going to take this long? Is it really going to take only or at least 30 days? Can you be more specific? And so the city of Santa Barbara gets involved by saying, did you notice these people correctly? And I'll be honest, I talked to everyone involved in this thing. I don't understand what the issue was that they did not do. I'm not saying that they did it right. As I understand it, they did not give a permit record to this one tenant. And that is a violation of the ordinance. They say we gave them everything else, but we didn't give them this
clause
one
for criminal charges.
And, yeah, but so the city, however, they have done this before, but it has not been as high profile with this case because this case is like a whole bunch of units, like 52 units or something. So this is the most high profile case. The city wants to let these people know you can't do this. Like you can't intimidate. We've got a progressive council. You can't do this. So it's a scare tactic. Like it's like we're gonna catch you. The landlords, the property owners, they're freaking out because they're like, how are we ever going to renovate a building if we face criminal charges every time we like try to improve our buildings, So they're being ridiculous on that end as well. So that's the issue. That's the debate. And what's hard to know is who's doing it the right way and it's a mistake, who's actually intimidating and they're trying to get these people out. We know it's real because we have lost 11% of our Latino population in the last 5 years. So we know it's real. Okay. So your question, Jerry, should they be filing criminal charges against James Knapp for this? Maybe this first time is just sort of a shot out there to say, you guys know better. Stop doing this. Because these landlords, they worked with Riker, Faw. They know what they're doing. These are
And yeah, and this is in the context.
They should know how to do this, right? And so that's the complication. So should the city be filing criminal charges? Probably not. But maybe one time to let these people know, hey, we have a knockout right hand ready to be delivered if you do this wrong.
And
FYI.
Nick,
it needs to be known though that these property owning Radius just put out a report saying that multi-apartment buildings with deferred maintenance and people paying really low rents right now, that's the biggest thing in the market, because if you get one of those, you can flip it. And the fact that they act like they don't know that they do that, you have to get the financing beforehand. You have to know exactly how bad that building is, so you know how much you can raise the rents after. So if I buy a building that has 20 units and they're paying $1,200 to $1,500 now, and I'm talking to my investors, they want to know, can I charge $5,000 to $6,000 a month? So this is all in the context of that. So there's all this political things happening, but the property owners know that. And so when people act like they don't know that, or act like it's a lot of other things, yes, we need housing. There's housing. It's so tough to build housing. We've heard Peter Lewis say how hard it is to build in Santa Barbara because the permitting and everything, and we know that. But there's also, it can't get lost that this is happening, this displacement, and how it's systematically happening.
yeah, Nick, I've only been here 22 years, but the only time I remember the city attorney filing criminal charges was your guy, Peeney, was that it? Daryl
Yeah,
Peeney?
Dario Pini. They basically threw the book. This was a number of years ago, where the first time they went after him, and Dario has a reputation for being a slumlord, and he lives up to it. He's sort of a mixed blessing in terms of he allows a lot of people to move in. He's not too squeamish about dogs and cats and kids, and but the maintenance is a problem. For a while, Dario had somebody on staff whose main job it was to listen to police scanner to see which of his units was having a visit from law enforcement. And if there was a cop showing up, Dario would be on the site. I mean, the guy does not sleep. So the city said, Dario, you're pathological. They took him to court for criminal slumlord charges. He was found guilty in Judge Frank Choa's courtroom, former judge. And Choa said, you can be sentenced to, you can either live in your own property, we will sentence you to live in your own property, or we're going to sentence you to county jail. Dario chose to go to county jail. And that was a while back. The city has since gone after him again in a massive case. It was even more massive, but it wasn't criminal.
And if I'm not mistaken, that settlement went towards the local housing trust fund also.
Yeah, that settlement was kind of a waste. I think everybody they were trying to protect was evicted by the time the trial was over. But it's a tricky one.
It's unusual. All right, we got to get out a couple things quick. Josh, Old Town Goleta had an interesting piece about it. A lot of unhappiness with the restriping and changing of parking over there, which your hero James Kiriako was leading the charge on.
My heroes change every week with you. It's hilarious.
So what's the issue there?
Old Town Goleta has 2 lanes going in each direction, and there's a huge parking deficit. We're talking about Hollister, essentially from like Fairview to Highway 217 or Kellogg, right around there. And so the city of Goleta wants to narrow it, or wants to reduce it from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. So 1 in each direction, add bike lanes, and back in angled parking. Okay. And so this is a huge thing. Old Town Goleta works commercially. Okay. We have a lot of families that live in Old Town on one side, like behind the 7-Eleven and in that whole area. And they shop there, they go there, they work there, they walk, and so it's very successful. There's like 1 vacant storefront that I saw walking
And
the block.
not chains for the most part.
And it is not changed. It doesn't look amazing. The facades, right? They're older buildings, they're 1 story. And so City of Goleta says, hey, we've had some accidents there. Okay, we've had some people hit by cars, not a lot, but a couple of high profile incidents. And so let's make it safer. Okay, and so this is what they want to do. And it's kind of split, right? There are a lot of business owners who are saying, don't mess with what we have. There are people like Old Town Coffee, Oat Bakery, some of these newer people that draw in a lot of the college students, etc. They're like, yeah, let's add more parking because they bring a lot of people and they congest the parking situation. So it's going to be a huge dramatic change for one of the most populated urban areas in our district. And
They're
the question
gentrifying it. Are they gentrifying it? Are they not? Is that not?
there are some people who feel that, right? It goes both ways, right? There are people who say these families, largely Latino, in these residences, they can't find parking because all these commercial people park in their neighborhoods doing the shopping, and so they don't find parking, so it takes parking away from them. There are others who say that this is going to be better, more bike lanes, it's less cars, it's environmentally friendly. These people who don't have cars, who walk and bike, it's like the whole white liberal perspective of what environmentalism should be in this town versus, hold up, versus
if you
social
look at
justice.
the people who ride bikes are not white people there. They're everybody.
Exactly. What I'm talking about are the activists who go to the meetings, who tell us how we should make Old Town Goleta, who don't live in Old Town Goleta. And I grew up partly in Old Town Goleta. So I'm talking about those people. I'm not talking about the families and the kids and the Latinos who ride their bikes. I'm very bluntly talking about the white activists, liberal activists who want to tell us we should live our lives through textbooks as opposed to who grew up here, who actually had to live it that way. That's what I'm talking about, Nick.
Nick, I imagine you'll be out there with a demonstration on behalf of these bike lanes.
Actually, I have really mixed feelings here. I mean, I'm really kind of almost as grumpy as you, Jerry, in terms of my knee-jerk sentimentality. But I like Old Town the way it is, and I worry about the sort of the zonification of Old Town.
Oh, that's a great parallel.
You might want to start calling it Old Town with an E at the end.
Old Towny. There you go.
Maybe old with an E too.
And
we need wineries and microbreweries in Old Town.
And a bunch of shoppies. Let's have a bunch of shoppies with the end too. All right, Nick, real quick, we didn't have you last week, but you finally got the Board of Supervisors to take some action on mental health beds, huh?
I think I had nothing to do with that.
Baloney.
It was about 12 years ago, it seems. The county of Santa Barbara opened a crisis stabilization unit out of sort of mental health campus out by Calle Real. And it has pretty much sat empty that whole time. And now there's 8 beds there that they're going to reactivate. It was empty for a couple of reasons. One, they didn't have the staffing to operate it, and B, because people could come and go. So they're reconfiguring them as a 23-hour, when you're really ready just to flip out, but if you have a place to go where you can chill and you can get some attention and maybe.
So this is not for 72-hour holds?
This is not an involuntary 72-hour hold. This is a 23-hour hold, but it's involuntary. So when you go in, you can't just walk out. So law enforcement in the past never took it to the other one because why am I going to take somebody who's going to be out the door in 5 seconds when they're in a state of crisis? So now law enforcement, they hired a private contractor to come in and run it to deal with the issue of staffing. And they're going to bring in, the people will stay for 23 hours.
And it's under the public health department?
Yeah. It's under behavioral wellness, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. It's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
It's not a big number, but
I'm totally serious that I think your reporting has had a lot to do with it. So kudos for that. All right, Josh Molina, Ryan P. Cruz, Nick Welsh, thank you all for taking the time. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time on Newsmakers.
All right.